Welcome, everybody, to the Nuggets of Gold YouTube channel. Today, we are just going to be recapping the day 3 selections by the 49ers. So, first pick in the 5th round was Jaylon Moore, offensive tackle out of Western Michigan. And Aiden, what are just your thoughts on this pick overall?
I think it's a good pick. So he played tight end in high school. He's really just going to push for that swing tackle role. I think Sean Coleman and in school are both on the clock to see if they're going to make the roster. But I think he's a guy who could even play guard in a pinch, which is something that the 49ers really value, and that's versatility on the offensive line. And I think it means that Brunskill is probably just playing center, and he might be the center of the future.
Yeah, that would be interesting if he does end up playing center because we were talking about like floating that idea around, maybe that could potentially happen. I do kind of wonder like what they want to do with him because we talked about him potentially playing that swing tackle role. I think he's around like 310, 315 pounds, 6'4". So this is a guy that could potentially be the swing tackle. Maybe they move him to guard. Maybe he's just strictly like maybe a future tackle. Who knows? Like who knows what's going on with Mike McGlinchey, and of course Trent Williams just signed a big deal, but he's a little bit older, so he's probably the guy that is most likely to be actually like battling for a roster spot because there's a good chance he doesn't make the roster over a guy like Sean Coleman. Because we haven't really got to see Sean Coleman much. He's been injured a lot of his time in San Francisco, but that's a guy that Shanahan has absolutely loved. So it'll be interesting to see like kind of what they do with him. But I think that he's probably just the least the guy that's most likely to actually be like battling for a roster spot. Because I think all these other 3 guys that we're about to talk about, I think that it's pretty clear that they all are going to make the roster. But I do like the pick. And also a lot of people a little bit frustrated, like, oh, you guys like they're just pounding offensive line. I like it. I mean, this has kind of been the complaint of, oh, we don't have our offensive line depth isn't there. Like that's why we keep losing. That's been a lot of like the issue. A lot of people have been, oh, Jimmy struggled. Well, the Niners had the 26th ranked offensive line. Like a lot of those reasonings have come up, and I think this is a perfect way to address it. Go heavy offensive line. And then also go heavy on the run game. We'll get into the other guy later. Another guy that some people are not liking that pick, but I think this pick makes sense, and I think it's just one of those moves where it's, hey, we got to go and we got to go get this depth. But then after that, the other 2 5th-round picks were Deommodore Lenoir out of Oregon. He's talked to the Niners. He's actually like I guess like a family friend, or I don't know if he's a family friend, but he said that Richard Sherman is like family to him. So interesting to see that. Maybe we get some rumors about Sherman coming back. I saw that this morning. I don't know if you saw those, Aiden. Potentially that could happen. I don't know if that actually has any smoke to it. I would probably lean no, but Lenore is a guy that some people have kind of questioned his coverage abilities. So I guess that's why a lot of people have also been kind of upset about this pick. But this is a guy that's very physical. Came out, said he is a hyena. So what are your thoughts on him, Aiden?
So he was Cristobal. He was his first big recruit to commit to Oregon after the Willie Taggart thing. So I was actually watching his commitment ceremony, which was weird to see him get drafted to the Niners. Made it seem kind of weird because he's played at Oregon for 4 years. I don't think he's missed a game. He's a good athlete, but I mean, when you're picking a corner in the 5th round, there's obviously going to be some flaws. But I think that he can play nickel, corner. I mean, he could even play that Jimmy Ward free safety role. I think he's very versatile, and that's something again that we've seen the Niners like because injuries have ravaged us. So it's probably good to get a nice durable corner, bring in some depth because behind the top 2 guys, behind Verrett and Mosley, it was kind of thin outside, and this guy can play inside nickel. So I was completely fine with the pick, even though I have a bit of a rooting interest, I would say.
And then the next pick was Talanoa Hufanga, who I think both me and you are very interested in this pick. We both think that he's probably going to play the Sam linebacker role. And maybe he goes and is the future like box safety kind of guy. Apparently his coverage skills are something that a lot of people were really high on him. Talked about how he can be like one of those linebackers that's able to cover like a DB. I know David Lombardi tweeted out about that he fits like that Fred Warner of like, hey, I'm going to go and cover any tight end, any running back, that kind of guy. So, that's a guy that when we're kind of talking about what are they going to do with this Sam linebacker role, and it was kind of floated around right when D'Amico Ryans got got hired was, oh, they want more linebackers on the field. And in theory, like you can say that, but it's hard to actually emulate when when teams bring out 3 wide receivers or whatever they do, and it kind of forces linebackers off the field. But if you have a linebacker that's a former safety that is a very, very good at covering, you can do that in some situations. So if they are trying to actually like expand this Sam linebacker role, then this is a guy that could definitely come in and fill in and do that. So still not going to see the field, 80-90% of the time. But I mean, if you're playing the Sam linebacker spot, I think in the past it's been like 30-40% of the time that guy's been on the field. That could maybe go up a little bit this year. So interesting to see if he comes in, and he's probably the guy that should start there, I think.
Yeah, he was probably my favorite pick out of these 5th-round guys. I think we've heard about how the Niners hit on 5th-round picks. He's probably my prediction for who's gonna end up being the biggest boom, but he does have some injury history. He played all games in 2020, won Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, and played super duper well. But before that, he had a bunch of different injuries. But I love to pick a guy with high upside, especially because like we have guys that can play that Sam linebacker role right now. A guy like Aziz could come in and play that at a very adequate level. I'm completely fine trotting him out there. But if a guy like Hufanga is gonna be like a much more high upside guy, it just gives you more, again, total versatility. And I think that you like mentioned it really quickly, but I think Tart is now probably on the clock. And I think this guy plays Sam this year. If he absolutely kills it at Sam, stay at Sam. But I think he could play strong safety. I think he could do a lot of different things back there. So this was my favorite pick out of the 5th-round guys.
I definitely like that one a lot, and I do think he's the most likely guy to be on the field a lot from the start of his career. Then the final pick of day 3 for the 49ers is Elijah Mitchell. So if you guys don't know, Elijah Mitchell, we took him in our mock draft. We only did one mock draft. We took him in the 7th round. We nailed that one. I think that was the only pick we got right. But I do like this pick. Dude ran a 4.32. And then Louis Riddick on the national broadcast, after he was selected, Louis Riddick came out and said, you want to see an example of a guy getting taken in the later rounds and then coming out and becoming a 1,000 yard like rushing guy, kind of running back. He goes, well, this is a guy right here that's going to do it. Basically saying Shanahan got a guy that he thinks is an absolute stud. 99 athleticism score on, I don't know what it's based off of, probably just his pro day numbers. But the only other guy that had that was Travis Etienne. So super cool to see that. I actually like the pick. I know some people are like, oh, are you kidding me? Another running back after Trey Sermon was selected. Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell are definitely going to be the two guys. I think at least they're going to be the 1-2 punch of the future. It looks like Wayne Gallman's not going to make the roster. JaMychal Hasty's not going to make the roster. We were big on Hasty season a while back. He was definitely an exciting guy, like end of the depth chart running back that was a little bit intriguing, but it doesn't look like that's kind of the move there. But what are your thoughts about just him as a player, and what do you kind of expect to see from him? I guess what do you expect to see from him next year? Because I don't know. I'm kind of like iffy on that.
I'm not sure, but I mean, we've had running backs go down. Mostert and Wilson both missed time last year. We've struggled with running back injuries in particular. And this is a guy, again, I think he missed 5 games his freshman year, but hasn't missed like a game for non-COVID related things since. Super durable, super fast. I think this means Mostert's probably gone at the end of this year, but I think we all assumed that. But I doubt he might be a practice squad guy this year, but I think next year in 2022, you're going to roll out Trey Lance, Elijah Mitchell, and Trey Sermon and have quite the 1-2 punch. But I think, honestly, Shanahan could want this guy to make the roster. He could play that Jet McKinnon role, catch passes out of the backfield as a I guess a scat back. Maybe he makes the roster. It's either going to be 3 or 4 running backs on the roster. I don't know how much they like Hasty over this dude. But when it comes to running backs, I'm going to trust Kyle Shanahan over pretty much anybody else.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan, Bobby Turner, big win for those two guys trying to mold the future 49er running backs in this draft because they got two of them. And I think those guys should be expected to be the 1-2 guys of 2022 to start. I think that this kind of spells the end of the Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert backfield. Not to say that they're not going to be a focal part of it this season. Of course, I think they definitely will. But I definitely think that they're kind of like on their way out, you know. But a couple other things just to go over real quick before we take off. John Lynch came out, said a few things after their picks already. Basically said that they think that Hurd's healthy, ready to go. So sounds like Jalen Hurd is the wide receiver 3 for the 49ers, which definitely surprising. I think we had Elijah Moore mocked to them in the second round.
I think it was
in our
third
mock.
round, but yeah.
Yeah, so
Relatively early.
Yeah, we had some early receivers getting mocked to them. So like pretty surprising they didn't even pick a single receiver. I know some people are frustrated with that, but I guess they really believe in Jalen Hurd, which it's exciting. I mean, we saw that what this dude could potentially become. So as long as he's healthy, I mean, that's a huge sign, but that's definitely a big if. So still kind of a big hole and a big question mark there. But a couple other notes. Lenoir, they said that they view him more as a nickel back with the ability to, become an outside corner or play outside corner if they're in a pinch. But they see him more as a nickel back. And Jaylon Moore, guy that we're kind of talking about as a swing tackle, they said that they view him more as a guard, which is very interesting because we kind of expected him to, fill in that swing tackle role. But maybe Sean Coleman and Justin School are going to do that, and then they're going to move him and kind of be a backup guard. And then maybe we're talking about whether or not the 49ers are going to extend Lake and Tomlinson. Maybe not. Maybe they don't think that he's that guy. So that's a big question there. I think those are kind of the other things that we need that are unanswered right now is what's the deal with Lake and Tomlinson? What's wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 looking like? Because they didn't address that really at all. So really, really interesting to see how that plays out. But I think that'll do it for today. Overall, I think I like the draft. I'm excited. I do have to say I am really excited about Elijah Mitchell because I think that's going to be a really cool pick. Even though some people are not happy about it, I know that there's some other guys on the board that a lot of people liked, but overall, I'm happy with this draft. I love the mentality of, hey, we're just gonna build this ground and pound offense, and where do we not have a lot of help and in depth was in the secondary too, and then they addressed that as well. So I do like this draft overall. But any other things you want to say before we take off, Aiden?
I guess expect 10 undrafted receivers to show up to camp. I mean, that's how we got Kendrick Bourne. And I think Richie James was a 7th round pick, but obviously we're recording this as the draft is finishing up. If a guy like Austin Watkins didn't get picked, or I mean, there's plenty of names out there. I think like you could get that 3rd, 4th, 5th dude. And don't forget about a guy like Jawan Jennings, who we picked last year, who nobody has really talked about. Hurd gets all the headlines as the Tennessee dude. But Jawan Jennings is, I mean, we've only heard good things about him from the 49ers front office. But yeah, basically, receiver isn't as big of a need as we maybe potentially thought, or they're going to invest heavily in the undrafted free agent market.
Which I would expect they do. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today's episode. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk about those undrafted guys they signed too later in this next week. But overall, I like the draft for the 49ers. I think it was a really good weekend for them, and I think the team got a lot better. So thanks everyone for listening.